that today we are going to be covering operator overloading, and in operator overloading we'll start with the negation operator. So for us to start, let's create a new project. We'll create a new project. Let's call it YT YouTube TAT operator overloading. Right, you click next, finish. And now that you have a new project, all you can do, you can create a new header file, add a new header file in your project. Call it negation. We select the path for it. Then we mark, debug and release, then we finish. Now that we have our project, we have our header file, all we can do, we can start creating our class. We'll say class, and then we'll name our class negation. Just like that. With negation operator. Negation operator is this operator. Nah? Let me make a small example here. If you have Buhle, let's say Buhle var1 equals to true, right? Then with a negation operator, you will say, let's say you want to create another Buhle, you will say Buhle var2, for instance, equals to not var1. Then you should get your var2 as false. If we were to output that, we'll say cout var1 var2. Oh, this is the negation operator. In coding, true is 1 and false is 0. So we said variable 1, it was equals to true. It was equals to true, which is 1, and then variable 2, it was equals to false, which is 0, because we said var2 is not equals to 1, meaning var2 is the opposite of variable 1. So we are going to try to overload this operator for classes so that it works with our classes. In order for us to reach that destination, we'll have to create a 2D array in our class here of booleans. We'll create dynamic arrays. We'll say type def, then we'll say bool pointer 1d, then we'll say type def 1d pointer equals to, it will be 2d. Right, then inside our class we'll have our private as usual. Then we'll have our public over here. Right, so if we create a two-dimension array, at some point we will need number of rows for the array, so we'll say rows. We'll need number of columns, so we'll say cols. We'll definitely need the array that we want to negate, right? So we'll say 2D to be a two-dimensional array, then we'll say array neg, for instance, right? These are our private variables. So when we come to public, First of all, we need to create a constructor of this class. In the constructor, what we're going to do, we're just going to give our rows and our calls initial values. Then we will initialize our array. So what we're going to do, if we still remember, when you create a constructor, you have to give it the same name as the name of the class. So we'll say negation. Do like this, right? For our example, since it's a small project, we can give it a fixed value. We'll say rows is equals to, let's say, maybe 10. Then we'll say calls equals to 5. Now that we have rows and calls, we can start allocating memory. Memory for our array, right? What we are going to do, we'll say arr neg is equal to new 1d add number of rows, right? Then we'll say for each index from 0 to less than number of rows I plus plus, we want to create columns there. So we'll say array at that index, that particular index, we want to create columns which will be bool at calls, right? Then we now have memory for our array, but this array is pointing to, I'll say, garbage memory at some place in the laptop. So we'll have to make it point to our values. Let's say we initialize it with false. We initialize it with false or true in our case. Then we will have to say loop through again to our array. And let me not say r, let me not say I, let me say r instead, right? R stands for rows, and then C will be calls. C less than calls, then C++. We'll say we'll initialize it to, let's give it false. At R at C equals to false, right? Now, okay, let's create a function to output our array so that we can see what's inside our array before we overload our operator, right? Okay, let's create a function that will output our array so that we can see what's inside our array. Or that function, we can make it a void. We will in the next episode we'll overload this operator. This operator, but for now we'll just create a function to output our array. So we'll make it we'll give it a return type of void, then we can just name it show array. That's how simple it is. Then inside we have to loop through a two-dimensional array, which will say int r equals to 0, r less than rows, then r plus plus. Say int c equals to 0, c less than calls, then c++. Now that we have created our nested for loop to loop through our array, we can say cout okay, let me create an if statement so that we will get an output. Instead of numbers, we'll get actual strings of true or false. So we'll say if array at that index, which is r, which is c, is equals to 1, Then we will output true. Right. Okay, let's can just give it a space here. We'll output true, else, right, we'll output false. Oh yes, if it's not true, it will be false. So we'll say false. There we go. We have our output array. So let's go to main and test our object, our class so far. All we need to do, we have to include our negation class. We'll say hashtag include. Remember, when you include a class that you created yourself, you use quotation instead of the chevrons. So what we'll do inside here, we'll type the name of the class that you want to include, negation. Then inside here, since we want to test a class, we'll have to create an object of that class. We'll say negation, then we'll just say obj1, just like that. Then okay, let me say obj1 dot show array. Right, then let me check. Okay, inside this nested for loop, we need to output an end line here, so that we need to output an end line so that it will show the square like it will have a square like output, or let me say rectangular like output. So we'll say end line or new line correct. Right, if we run this code, okay, if we build and run, okay, here we don't have I, we have R. Then let's try to build and run again. It says Buhle. Oh, Buhle, not Buhle, but new Buhle. Okay, let's build and run again. See, out was not declared. Okay, let's move this include to our header file. Then let's see, move this include names standard namespace to our header file also. Then I think we are good to go. Let's build and run again. Yeah, there we go. We can see our output, it's false, 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 because when we initialized our array in our constructor here, we initialize it to false. Hence our output is false. So if we were to overload the negation operator, we want an operator whereby if I say, for instance, let me say negation obj2 is equals to not obj1. Right, if I build and run this code, it should give me an error because it doesn't know this operator in this particular class. You see, it says no match for operator, then it specifies the operator. Operand type is negation, right? It doesn't know this operator, but we saw earlier on when we use it with booleans, it works fine. So what we are going to do, we are going to come let me show you, even if you do it like this, because some people will say if you start by creating an object, then you assign them later and stuff. So if you do it like this, it will still give you the same error. Oh, sorry, I'll say obj1, then this one will be obj2, not obj1. If you do it like this, it will give you the same error. You see, it's the same error. So what we are going to do, we are going to come to our header file, and then inside our header file, what we are going to do, we are going to overload the operator, right? Overloading negation operator. So how I usually the way I usually attempt operator overloading, what I ask myself, what is the return type of that operator? Okay, if you can check in this main, we said this object B, object2 is equals to the first object. This is an object of class negation. So meaning this operator here must return negation in order for me to be able to assign it to negation without getting any errors. So what I will do, I will come to my main here. I'll type the return type first. I'll say negation. Right, then I'll have to tell C++ that what I'm doing now, I'm overloading an operator. Hence, I have that operator there. But now I've told C++ that I'm overloading an operator. I didn't specify which operator. That's when I have to specify the type of the operator I want to overload, which is the negation operator. Then I'll open parentheses as usual. Then I'll open curly braces here. Then inside here, you have to write the logic of that function, what you want it to do. If we check here, what we want to see, whenever we say object2 is not equals to, it's equals to the opposite of object1. We want object2 to carry the values which are opposite to object2. We want object2 to carry values which are opposite to object1, meaning if object1 has truths, then object2 must have falses. If object1 at index 55 it has a false, then object2 at index 55 it must have a true, right? So what I will do, I will come here. I will have to create a temporary class, which will be negation. I can call it anything. I'll say temp, right? Because at some point I'll have to return a negation, so that's why I'm creating this temporary class here. What I will then do, I will have to assign memory to this temporary class which I've created here. So meaning I'll have to say temp dot what was the name of my array, which was array is equals to new 1D add rows, like we did in our constructor. And then I'll have to loop through the rows. I'll say int r equals to 0. Then I'll say r is less than rows. Then I'll say r plus plus, right? Then for each row, I want to create columns. So I'll say temp dot at that particular index, I want to create a column, which will be of type Boolean, obvious. Then I'll say calls. There we go. Then I'll have to loop through my columns. I'll say int c equals to 0. Then I'll say c less than calls. Then I'll say c++. Inside here, what I need to do, that's where the logic comes, right? I'll say temp array, my temporal array at that index, which I don't know the index. must be equals to the opposite of the original array, which is this one, at the same index. So if you are at index 1, if our original array at index 1 is true, then our temp array must be false. If at index 2 our original array it's false, then our temporal array must be true. That's what we are trying to do with this inside this for loop. Then what we are going to do outside our nested for loop, we'll have to return our temporal array. Return temp. That's all we need to do. Then now if we try to run the same code, it runs but doesn't show the output. So what we can do, we can come to main, we'll say we'll output object 1, then we must give it a few lines, then we'll output object 2, which is opposite of object 1, dot show array. If we run this code, we should get the first array with trues, then the second array with falses. Okay, seems like I'm getting an error here. It's not equal to that array, but it's equal to the opposite. Not sure if I'm making sense, because we want to negate every index in the original array. In our new object, we want it to be the opposite of the old object. So if we build and run again, we should get the first array to be falses and the second array to be trues. There we go. The first array it's falses, the second array it's trues. Then someone will be asking, what happens if you have mixed values of trues and false? You don't only have falses and trues. So we'll come to our constructor. Let's say if R is equals to, let me say, rows half rows over 2, and I want to put it in the middle, C is equals to, it must be logic operator, not assignment operator, is equals to calls over 2. We want it to be, this one was false, this one will be true. Let's change this false to true. Let's build and run. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this kind of a content, don't forget to click the like button, share with friends, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.